Sup? I figured I'd just do a comic book introduction instead of a review. And I wanted to do it on, as you can see, by Wildstorm, Gen 13. Now, we all know about X-Men. I mean, they've been around for years. It's pretty much engraved in us mentality and stuff, cause how X-Men are. But, and only a handful of us knows about Gen 13. Well, I can take that back. I mean, a lot of people may have heard of Gen 13, but that's the thing. Some of them may have heard of Gen 13, but really have no history or knowledge of Gen 13. So, this is why I'm doing this video. The members of Gen 13, as you can see, is Fairchild, Freefall, Grunge, Rainmaker, Burnout. Now, who they were, well, that's pretty much their code name. Who they were before their power became active was Caitlin, Roxy, Eddie, Sarah, and Bobby. Now, the reason for the group being called Gen 13, it wasn't really decided upon them. You see, a corporate company actually created them. Yeah, that's right. They're pretty much Frankenstein's monster. And the reason why they were created, it depends on who the financial suppliers were. You will get into that when you read the series. But, however, this company have made other generation of teenagers superpowered. And this is the 13th generation. So, picture it as like you met a cyborg and his name is 00245 and the next cyborg would be 00246. So it's like that's how the company, they make their product in groups and they set them by generation. So that explains why they are known as Gen 13. Now, as I mentioned, before their powers were activated, see, that's the thing. What this company did is they create these teenagers. Well, they started out as infants and they were given, foster parents who were hired by the actual same company. Sometimes the foster parent can consist of secretly really being scientists or analysts or whomever what their job titles were when they worked for the company. But however, to these kids, they were parents, with the exception of Bobby, because he went through 6 foster parents. It's because, well, he kind of have a troubled past where he ends up going to like 2 basically juvenile delinquent facilities. He ran away probably 4 times. And each time he had good reason, because of what was going on with his foster parent. He was very violent, and he really just pretty much was it seemed like trouble was always following him. He wasn't really a troublemaker per se, but he just had it rough. And it seemed like, nothing but destruction was going to happen to him until his love of reggae music sort of saved his life, sort of saved his well-being. But as I mentioned, they each were given foster parents, where to them they were mom and dad, real parents. So they grew up with them and they were nurtured, they were raised. It was kind of cool. You actually see how some of their lives were like throughout the whole ordeal. Now, before I continue, I almost forgot to mention, even though you see the name Gail Simone and Talent Caldwell, Gail is the writer. Talent, I believe, was the inker or the penciler, basically the drawer, the artist of this. Now, you will notice as I keep scrolling around, there are other names. Those are people that also worked in it, and it depends on which issues who worked on what. But the actual creators of Gen 13 was actually Jim Lee and a couple of other people. Let me check real quick. I had the name, but I almost forgot. Here we go. Let me give you this listing right here. As you can see, if I can get the camera, there we go. Writer, penciler, inkers, colors, letters, collected edition, and as you can see right there, it says, I'm trying to get focus, there we go, Gen 13, created by Jim Lee, Brandon Choi, and J. Scott Campbell. So yeah, kind of cool. Now, like I mentioned already, Gen 13 have been in a couple Marvel comics because they gotten popular where they transpired over to them. I don't know in later series if they were bought off by Marvel, but I do know, as you can see, they were created by the company Wildstorm. Now, as I was saying, these foster parents were raising these kids as if they were their own, which was kind of cool. They needed it, they learned and everything. Fairchild was pretty much the nerd. Roxy was pretty much the troublemaker. I mean, she didn't really fit with society much. She's always stealing and stuff. And as I mentioned, Fairchild, Caitlin, before her powers were activated, she was the nerd. But she was more double standard. It's like, she wasn't very athletic. She wasn't good at sports. She tried to be social, but it seemed like everybody hated her. And her mentality at the time was, do people hate me because I'm smart, or am I smart because people hate me? So it's like, you know, anybody that can think like that, it's like a double standard type deal. Roxy, as I already mentioned, she's more of a troublemaker. Most she do is she'll steal. And, you know, like I said, throughout her whole time, when people would look at her, they would see like she's a troublemaker. They would think she's a monster or a skank or, you know, all that other stuff. So, yeah, she wasn't the, how can I put it, the good girl, so to speak. Even though nobody really, once you get to know her, you'll see the opposite. Eddie is more of the party guy. He's all about action movies, skateboarding, and women. That's it. That's the best I can say. That's how he lived his life. That's why, even before his power activated, he was already a martial artist himself, and he was very fit. So it's not like, you know, when he became activated, all of a sudden he became ripped or big. No, he was already that way. It's just that once his power was activated, that's when it became a whole different ordeal. His personality was still the same and intact, but yeah, he's pretty much the party guy. Rainmaker, well, basically Sarah, before her power was activated, she was more of a, how can I put it? She's social, but at the same time, because of her preference, kind of hard to convey with anyone. Because it seemed like, you know, she's very straightforward. She's good at heart, but she thinks as a whole. She's straightforward, don't pull any punches, and she's more like a spokesman type person. And as already I mentioned about how Bobby is, so you guys already get the drift. Now, when their powers activate, Fairchild is pretty much like Wonder Woman. She was already intelligent as it is, but next thing you know, she got an increase in intelligence. She becomes very agile. She's ridiculously strong. She's powerfully strong. In some issues, it shows that she has the ability to fly. Other issues show that she don't. So it's more like give or take. But other than that, what still seems to be intact is that she becomes very beautiful, very athletic. She gets taller. She's like, basically, like I said, Wonder Woman of her group. Roxy, who now becomes Freefall, she has the ability to control gravity. She had the ability of flight as well. So because of her ability to control gravity, she can make things float, she can make things fall, you know, hence the name Freefall. Eddie becomes Grunge. Now, Grunge ability is, well, once his powers finally activate, which was later on, he pretty much, anything he touches, he can absorb the molecular material and become what it is he touched. Like, for example, wood, metal, etc., etc., etc. Whatever he touches, he can actually become. Another thing about his ability, it shows that he can also shapeshift, but I'll get into that. Well, you'll probably discover that later on into the issues. Rainmaker, well, obviously, hence the name Rainmaker. She's kind of like Storm. Only difference is it shows she just do more on the electrical base of things. She's ridiculously swift. She's very muchly angry, and there's a reason why. So yeah, Rainmaker. And as you can see, for Burnout, obviously he's the Human Torch of the team. So yeah. Now, when they first meet each other, obviously there was trust issues. But then eventually they all discovered, because, like I mentioned, the company that created them, the guy that runs the company, whatever he says goes. It doesn't matter which generation team. If he dictate what happened, that's what happened. And unfortunately for Gen 13, he wanted their foster parent killed in front of them. Or vice versa. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I thought you already said that their foster parents actually worked for the company. Well, once their powers were activated, which, believe it or not, the company that made them can also activate their powers, I guess their foster parents got the MO that they're no longer needed and that they were going to die. So, with the exception of Rainmaker, who parent took the suicide path, everyone else parents were killed. And even though it was Bobby's sixth foster parent, you do have a sense of he actually cared for that person instead of the others. Now, because of their foster parents being killed, now I keep saying foster, it turns out once their powers are activated that their real parents were not really their parents. They were, as I already mentioned, fosters, but to them they were real parents. So pretty much they're like orphans, and they really can't find their place in the world. And that's what's cool about this comic book series, is because when I flip this over, here's a good quote. We do what everyone our age wants to do in the world. We find our place. And I should have moved this back a little. Yeah, by Caitlin Fairchild. And as you can see, those dots on them, obviously laser pointers, about to get killed. But they're holding each other. Now, Rainmaker is in that picture, but they can only fit so much into the frame for this back cover. But as you can see, I don't know how well you can read this, but hopefully y'all could be able to read that. You can pause it, see more, and yeah, like I said, Gen 13 is a good series to get into. If you already have gotten into them, then you already know much about them. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you just want to know, okay, what's the best comic to start off getting into, because they do have a lot of issues and a lot of volume. I would recommend, just to start off, as an introduction, Best of the Bad Lot and Road Trip, which is basically a follow-up from Best of the Bad Lot. Others, as you can see, We'll Take Manhattan is also pretty good, and Grunge the movie, because this is more of an in-depth about how Grunge is and how his mentality. So yeah, it's pretty comical. Now, people that they meet within the Gen 13 world, like I mentioned, they do happen to be part of like the X-Men or whatnot, but some of them are quirky, some of them are weird, and sometimes in the comic issues it's actually kind of funny, but you relate to everybody so easily. And the villains, whether it's their friends or good guys, bad guys, the trouble that this group goes through, you can actually see yourself going, okay, what would I do in that situation? And that's why I kind of like Gen 13. I kind of got into them late 90s, but it was definitely worth it. They are pretty much a good comic book series. Highly recommended. Yeah, check them out. Any comic book retailers may have some. Check out online. Definitely go to that cheap comic book shop. I'll put the link on the bottom so that way you guys can see if they have it. You can also try Amazon. You can try it wherever your favorite provider is. But I highly recommend you guys checking out the Gen 13. Very good read. Sometimes it can be a little emotional. Other times it can be funny. But what really counts is that it's very relatable. Now, since I turned the back with that one, just to show you guys more about the art style, give you more of an in-depth look. That's Fairchild. And what I like about this comic series, it sort of shows like they're a rowdy bunch of a group. And they can be a bit rowdy, but at the same time, they're teenagers who now have powers. So, and it's more like you're growing with them, trying to see how they can deal with it. So, yeah, like I said, Gen 13, highly recommend it. Alright then, later.